The desert stretched endlessly under a pale gray sky, the wind carrying whispers of unease. Colonel Darius Kane tightened his grip on the steering wheel as their convoy rumbled across the barren expanse. The radio buzzed with static, breaking only for terse updates from his men. The air was heavy with the tension of the unknown. 2 hours earlier, a blinding flash lit up the horizon, followed by a seismic jolt that shook the surrounding towns. Now, Kane and his team of elite operatives were en route to the impact site, a remote patch of wilderness far from civilization. Visual on the target zone, Sergeant Rourke called out from the lead vehicle, his voice crackling over the comms. Kane squinted at the horizon. What should have been a charred crater was instead marked by a shimmering black structure. It pulsated faintly, as if alive, its surface oozing an iridescent liquid. He glanced at Dr. Marcel Griggs, the scientist accompanying the mission, who was staring intently at the anomaly. "That's no meteorite," Griggs murmured. The convoy came to a halt. Soldiers poured out of the vehicles, forming a defensive perimeter around the site. The closer they got, the stranger it appeared. The black structure seemed to hum with energy, emitting faint, melodic vibrations. The liquid surrounding it snaked outward, tracing intricate patterns in the sand. "Rourke, Jenkins, secure the perimeter," Kane ordered. "Griggs, you're up." Griggs approached cautiously, his scanner emitting a soft beep. He knelt beside the strange liquid, his gloved hand hesitating, before scooping a small sample. As he analyzed it, his expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. "It's alive," Griggs whispered, his voice trembling. "Not in the traditional sense. This isn't terrestrial biology. It's adaptive, reactive." Before Kane could respond, a shout erupted from the perimeter. Private Harris stumbled backward, his rifle shaking in his hands. "Sir," movement. In the sand, all eyes turned to the ground. The black liquid was converging, pulling together as if guided by an unseen will. It began to rise, forming a humanoid figure. The soldiers froze, weapons trained on the shape as it solidified into a mirror-like version of Harris. "What the?" Harris muttered, taking a step back. The mimic tilted its head, perfectly replicating Harris's movements. Its surface rippled, as if testing its form. Griggs stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Don't engage. It's observing us." Kane gestured for everyone to hold their fire. He studied the mimic, its glassy surface reflecting the surrounding men. It moved without aggression, but its presence exuded an uncanny menace. "What are you?" Kane asked, his voice calm yet commanding. The mimic made no sound. Instead, it extended an arm, its fingers elongating into tendrils. It touched the sand, and more figures began to rise. Within moments, half a dozen humanoid shapes stood before the team, each one a replica of a soldier. "Colonel," Rourke said, his voice low. "Permission to open fire?" "Negative," Kane replied. "We don't know what we're dealing with." One of the mimics stepped forward, its movements jerky and unrefined. It raised an arm, mirroring the exact stance of Private Jenkins, who had instinctively raised his weapon. "Stand down, Jenkins," Kane barked, but it was too late. Jenkins panicked, squeezing the trigger. The bullet tore through the mimic's chest, shattering its surface into shards of black liquid. For a moment, it seemed the threat was neutralized. Then the shards quivered, pulling back together with alarming speed. The mimic reformed, its surface now more fluid, its movements more deliberate. The others advanced, their blank faces turning toward the soldiers. "Fire!" Kane shouted. The desert erupted in chaos. Gunfire echoed across the dunes as the soldiers unloaded their weapons. The mimics absorbed the bullets, their forms rippling but not faltering. The liquid on the ground surged forward, wrapping around the boots of the soldiers. Griggs scrambled back, shouting over the gunfire. "It's learning. Stop shooting. You're only making it stronger." Kane grabbed a grenade from his belt and hurled it toward the nearest mimic. The explosion sent black liquid spraying in every direction, but the fragments reassembled almost instantly. The mimics were relentless, their movements growing faster and more coordinated. "Fall back," Kane ordered. The team retreated to the convoy, the black liquid surging after them like a living tide. Kane climbed into the lead vehicle, barking orders into the comms. "Rourke, get us out of here." "Griggs, what the hell are we dealing with?" Griggs was pale, his hands trembling as he clutched his scanner. "It's not just alive, it's sentient. This isn't random. It's testing us." The convoy roared to life, tearing across the desert as the black tide pursued them. The soldiers fired out of the windows, but the liquid remained unrelenting. Kane glanced back, his jaw tightening. "We're not dealing with an invasion," he muttered. "This is an evaluation, and we're failing." The black structure on the horizon began to shift, its surface pulsating with increasing intensity. Lightning crackled in the sky, illuminating the vast desert in flashes of white and blue. Kane knew this was just the beginning. Whatever Darecola was, it wasn't here by accident. It had a purpose, and they were running out of time to figure out what it was. As the convoy disappeared into the distance, the black liquid slowed its pursuit, retreating back toward the shimmering structure. But the sense of foreboding lingered. Darecola wasn't finished. It was merely observing, adapting, preparing for the next move. The desert morning broke cold and quiet, the distant black structure standing as a foreboding monolith on the horizon. Colonel Darius Kane stood outside the temporary base, eyes locked on the shimmering anomaly. Around him, soldiers murmured nervously, their confidence shaken by the events of the previous night. Inside the command tent, the atmosphere was no less tense. Sergeant Rourke unfolded a satellite image of the impact site on the table. The structure's eerie glow was visible even from orbit, pulsating like a living heart. "Colonel," Rourke began, his voice firm but strained, "that thing isn't sitting idle. Scouts report the liquid has spread another half-mile overnight." Kane nodded, his jaw set. "What about the villagers? Any sign of survivors?" "None, sir," Rourke replied grimly. "It's like they've vanished into thin air." Dr. Marcel Griggs, hunched over a laptop, interrupted. "Not vanished," he corrected, his tone clipped. "Assimilated. The patterns we saw etched in the sand. Those weren't random. They're neural imprints, like a memory carved into the landscape. Whatever Darecola is, it's absorbing everything it encounters." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kane glanced at the men around the table. Each face bore the same haunted expression. "Then we don't have time to waste," Kane said. "What's the best way to contain this thing?" Griggs hesitated. Containment might not be an option. It's evolving too fast. Our only chance is to disrupt its neural network. If we can even locate it. Rourke frowned. "You're saying we're fighting a brain without a body." "Something like that," Griggs admitted. "And it's learning. Faster than we can react." Kane straightened, his voice sharp with resolve. "Then we adapt faster. Rourke, assemble a recon team. We need to understand this thing before it understands us." The approach 300 words. By midday, the recon team was ready. Kane led the group himself with Rourke, Griggs, and 3 of their best soldiers, Corporal Davis, Private Harris, and Specialist Lee. They moved cautiously through the desert, the black structure looming closer with every step. The terrain grew stranger as they advanced. The sand beneath their boots had hardened, its surface slick with the same iridescent sheen as the Darecola liquid, twisted shapes, resembling petrified trees or skeletal remains. Jutted from the ground, their forms eerily symmetrical. Griggs paused to examine one of the shapes, his scanner beeping incessantly. "These aren't natural formations," he said. "They're constructs, molecular replicas of the organic matter it's consumed. So, it's turning everything into itself?" Harris asked, his voice tinged with unease. "Not just that," Griggs replied. "It's refining, improving." Kane motioned for silence. Ahead, The ground sloped into a shallow basin where the black liquid was pooling in massive quantities. Tendrils of the substance reached skyward, writhing as if alive. At the center of the basin, a humanoid figure stood motionless, its glossy surface reflecting the desert sun. The team froze. Kane raised a hand, signaling for everyone to stay low. Through his binoculars, he studied the figure. Unlike the mimics they had encountered earlier, this one was distinct, larger, more defined. Its form was unerringly human, yet its movements were alien, each shift a fluid ripple through its body. "It's waiting for us," Kane muttered. "Or baiting us," Rourke added grimly. The trapped 300 words. As the team edged closer, the figure turned its head sharply, as if sensing their presence. A low hum reverberated through the air, and the black liquid surged upward, forming additional humanoid shapes. "Fall back," Kane ordered, but the ground beneath them quaked violently. The hardened surface cracked and liquid tendrils shot up, ensnaring Harris and Davis. "Help!" Harris shouted, struggling against the encroaching substance. His cries were cut short as the liquid enveloped him, his body dissolving into the inky mass. Rourke and Lee opened fire, their bullets tearing through the liquid creatures, but failing to stop their advance. Griggs scrambled to deploy a device from his pack, a makeshift electromagnetic disruptor. "Buy me 30 seconds," Griggs shouted. Kane and Rourke positioned themselves defensively, their rifles spitting lead at the advancing mimics. The creatures moved with unsettling precision, adapting to each new tactic. One mimic lunged at Lee, its arm morphing into a blade. Kane tackled him out of the way, narrowly avoiding the strike. "Griggs, hurry," Kane barked. The device emitted a high-pitched whine, followed by a burst of energy. The mimics convulsed, their forms destabilizing momentarily. The team seized the opportunity to retreat, dragging Davis's unconscious body with them. Regrouping in Revelation 300 words. Back at base, the atmosphere was somber. Harris was gone, and Davis was in critical condition, his skin mottled with strange black veins where the liquid had touched him. Griggs worked furiously, analyzing the data from their encounter. "The good news is, the disruptor works," he said. "But it's not enough. Darecola's neural network is distributed. It doesn't have a single point of failure. Disabling one part only forces the rest to adapt. So, we're fighting something invincible," Rourke asked bitterly. "Not invincible," Kane said, his voice steady. "Just intelligent. Every move we make teaches it something new. But that means it's not omniscient. It's still learning." Griggs nodded. "If we can overload its system, introduce too much data for it to process, it might destabilize." "How do we do that?" Rourke asked. "We force it to adapt faster than it can handle," Griggs replied. "A coordinated multi-front assault. But we'll need every resource we have." Kane's eyes hardened. "Then that's what we'll give it. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about proving we're not prey." As night fell, the team prepared for the ultimate confrontation. The Darecola structure loomed in the distance, pulsating with an ominous glow. Kane knew they were walking into the heart of the storm, but he also knew they had no choice. The air around the black structure felt heavy, saturated with an energy that thrummed just below the range of hearing. Colonel Kane's team stood at the edge of the Darecola zone, their expressions a mixture of fear and grim determination. The plan was simple in theory, but daunting in execution. Overload the neural network of the Darecola organism by hitting it with simultaneous attacks from multiple angles, forcing it to split its focus beyond what it could manage. Success would destabilize the entire structure. Failure meant certain death. Kane tightened the strap on his helmet, his gaze sweeping over the team. Sergeant Rourke checked his weapon, his face a mask of stoic resolve. Specialist Lee carried the EMP disruptor, the device primed and humming with barely contained power. Dr. Griggs, though visibly nervous, clutched a portable scanner, his eyes darting between his equipment and the towering monolith ahead. "Listen up," Kane said, his voice cutting through the tension. This thing is smarter than we are, but it doesn't know everything. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and don't give it any room to outthink us." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We end this today, approaching the heart, 300 words." The team advanced cautiously, fanning out as they crossed the corrupted terrain. The ground was alive beneath their boots, tendrils of Darecola twitching as if aware of their presence. Above, the black structure loomed larger, its surface rippling with strange patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. Dr. Griggs's scanner beeped erratically. "We're close," he whispered. The neural activity spikes toward the center. "If we disrupt it there, we might shut down the entire system." Suddenly, the air around them shifted. From the structure's base, humanoid forms began to emerge, sleeker and more defined than before. These mimics moved with alarming speed, their liquid bodies shifting seamlessly into weapons as they advanced. "Contact!" Rourke shouted, opening fire. His shots tore through the first wave, but more figures replaced them almost instantly. Lee activated the EMP disruptor, sending out a pulse that caused several mimics to collapse into formless puddles. "We need to move now," he yelled. Kane signaled for the team to push forward. They weaved through the chaos, their path illuminated by the eerie glow of the Darecola substance. Each step brought them closer to the structure, but the resistance intensified. The mimics were no longer just defending. They were coordinating. Griggs stumbled as a tendril lashed out, narrowly missing him. Kane pulled him to his feet. "Stay focused, Griggs. We're almost there." Inside the monolith 300 words, the team breached the outer layer of the structure, stepping into an environment that defied logic. The interior was cavernous, with walls that shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting distorted versions of the soldiers. The air was thick and humid, vibrating with a low, resonant hum. "This isn't just a structure," Griggs said, his voice trembling. "It's alive." At the center of the chamber stood the core, a massive, pulsating sphere of Darecola material suspended in midair. Tendrils extended from it, connecting to the walls and floor like veins feeding a living organism. The sphere pulsed rhythmically, each beat sending ripples of light through the chamber. "That's it," Kane said. "The heart of this thing." Before they could act, the core reacted. The tendrils retracted and the sphere's surface shifted, forming a humanoid shape larger and more imposing than any mimic they had encountered. Its surface gleamed like polished obsidian, and its eyes, if they could be called that, glowed with an intense white light. "It's protecting itself," Griggs said. "No kidding," Rourke muttered, raising his weapon. The creature moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance in seconds. Kane dodged a swipe from its blade-like arm, rolling to the side and firing a volley of rounds into its torso. The bullets sank into its surface, but seemed to have little effect. "Lee, get that disruptor ready," Kane shouted. Lee scrambled to position the device, but the creature was relentless. It lashed out, sending Rourke sprawling. Kane and Griggs worked together to draw its attention, firing and moving in coordinated bursts. "Come on, you oversized oil slick," Kane growled, firing another round. The final blow, 300 words. Lee finally activated the disruptor, sending out a powerful pulse. The creature convulsed, its form destabilizing, but it quickly began to recover. Griggs yelled, "It's adapting. We need more power." Kane gritted his teeth. "Overload it. Blow the whole thing." Lee hesitated. "That much energy could..." "Do it," Kane barked. Lee adjusted the device, increasing its output to maximum. The disruptor began to whine, its casing glowing red-hot. Kane and Rourke covered Lee, holding off the advancing mimics that had begun to swarm into the chamber. "Griggs, help him set the charge," Kane ordered. Griggs nodded, working furiously to stabilize the disruptor as it built toward critical mass. The creature roared, its voice a deafening blend of metallic screeches and guttural howls. It lunged toward the disruptor, but Kane intercepted it, slamming into its side with everything he had. The impact sent him sprawling, but it bought the team the time they needed. The disruptor emitted a blinding flash, and the chamber was consumed in a wave of energy. The core collapsed in on itself, the tendrils disintegrating into ash. The mimics froze, their forms crumbling into lifeless puddles. For a moment, there was silence. Kane struggled to his feet, coughing through the haze of dust and smoke. Around him, the team was battered but alive. "Is it over?" Rourke asked, his voice hoarse. Griggs checked his scanner, his expression one of cautious relief. "The network is gone." "It's over." Kane surveyed the remains of the chamber. The Darecola threat had been neutralized, but at a great cost. "Let's go home," he said, leading the team out of the structure as the first rays of dawn broke over the desert.